If you have finished your book or you are close to it, then this video is for you. And if you're in the earlier stages of writing, then this video is also for you because you're going to be here eventually, right? So you should watch and save this video so you know what's coming up. This is a checklist of 7 things you absolutely need to do before publication. Because if you miss one of these things, or God forbid, 2 or 3 of these things, it really ruins your book. So let's get started right away by looking at number 1, genre clarity. So here's what people think is most important about their book cover. They're worried whether it's beautiful, right? Does it look good? And they're also worried about whether it captures the essence of how they picture their character in their brain. I got a little secret for you. Neither of those things matters in the slightest, okay? What really matters for your book club, I mean, really truly matters, is whether it tells the reader in half a second or less what the genre is. It's not just like the number 1 thing, it's literally the most important thing if you actually want, your book to sell some copies. So H.M. Ward released her book Scandalous and sold almost 0 copies. Now, what genre do you think this is? Seriously, take a second and make your best guess. Because when she showed this to readers, a lot of readers just didn't know what it was. Some of them guessed thriller, others were I don't know. Then she revised the cover, right? And this time the only thing she cared about was does this cover tell them what's inside the book? Does it tell them the actual genre? So this new cover, you can obviously tell, okay, this is adult romance, right? Maybe some 50 Shades of Grey vibes. And so now with the new cover, oh, her book hit the New York Times bestseller list. That's the difference that a cover makes, right? And it's not about whether the cover looks good or not. The first one looked cool. It's about communicating the genre. Now, after you promise the readers a certain genre with the cover, then you have to fulfill that promise in the first chapter of your book by really delivering on the pleasures of the genre. So if you're writing a crime novel, give the readers a crime in that first chapter. I'm not talking about chapter 2. I'm not talking about chapter 5, right? Right at the very beginning. Hey, this is what you're looking for. If you're writing a horror novel, then the very first chapter needs to deliver some of the horrifying stuff. It's also a really good idea if both the cover and your first chapter clarify not just the genre, but the subgenre, because readers tend to buy within lanes, right? They're not just looking for a mystery. Oh, they're looking for a cozy mystery. They're not just looking for straight romance. They're looking for romantasy. And they're not looking for the broad category of sci-fi. No, they're looking specifically for space opera. The more you can drill down your genre, the easier it is to find your readers. Hey, if you want to make your book as great as it possibly can be, I can help you with that. Bookfox Lab starts in just a couple of days, very soon. And our mentors have guided authors just like you to wild success with a lot of different publishers. People who have been through our program say stuff like, before this, I felt like I'd been faking it. Now, I actually feel like a writer. All you gotta do is click the link in the description to reach out and let's start a conversation. Second thing you absolutely have to do before moving on to publishing your book is title searchability. So I got a question for you. Can someone easily find your book by just searching for the title on Google? Tabitha Barrett's novel, Fallen Angels, was not easily searchable. I mean, just Google this, right? It's a really crowded field. It brings up a movie, a Broadway show, a Wikipedia page, a music video, a Bible commentary. So her book would probably come after all of those. So what did she do? She renamed it. She renamed it to The Third Throne. And now if you Google The Third Throne, guess what? It's the very first search result. So I want you to think about, can you win the Google war with your title? I mean, if your book title's coming up 7th or God forbid 15th, that's really gonna crimp your sales. And just remember, you're not just competing against other books, right? You're competing against all media. You're competing against plays. You're competing against musicals. You're competing against song titles. Now, a really easy way to help your book to stand out is not to title it a single word. Author Kelly DeVos originally titled her book 2020, and it would just get lost in a sea of other search results. So her publisher said, nope, we're not doing that. Publisher suggested Day Zero, and much more memorable title, much more searchable title. This next step is probably the most difficult one for authors to do well. It is number 3. Comp title honesty. If I had $1 for every single time an author told me that their book was entirely original and had absolutely no peers, I would be richer than Jeff Bezos. When you were telling someone that your book isn't like any other book out there, what you're really communicating is not something about the book, you're really communicating something about yourself. You're saying, I'm not particularly well read. I know that might be a little bit harsh. Sorry, I'm just out here dropping truth bombs today. But I mean, you're saying I don't know what else is out there. Look, your job after publishing a book is to convince lots of people to buy the book. And the best way you have of doing that is comparing your book to two things that they already know and that they already like. So I'm going to give you 5 different ways that you can sort of pitch comp titles as a way to convince people to buy the book. The first one's the most common. You probably thought of it right away. My book is like X meets Y. The Girl on the Train meets HBO Girls. Okay, all right, now we got like a sense of this crossover, this mixing. Another good way to say it is, I see my novel on the shelves alongside, and then you list a whole bunch of books that like are in the ballpark or the genre of your book. Another good way to say it, this novel will appeal to fans of, and then list several titles that you think your ideal reader would have already read. And lastly, use this phrase, my book is in the vein of, and then list a couple of books that you think are at least in the ballpark. Now here's some things that you should never do when comp titling. One is listing dead authors. I mean, Hemingway is not going to get you that far. It's much, much better if you can list modern authors. Second, you shouldn't be comping things that are like way too popular. Like if you're saying, oh, my book is like Harry Potter meets Hunger Games. I mean, it just feels a little cliche. Lastly, don't be afraid to include other media for comp titles. You can include musicals or plays or TV shows or movies if it's right for your book. This fourth step is probably the most uncomfortable one to do, but one of the most necessary. So it is number 4. Giving your one-line pitch to a stranger. Now, first, you got to create a one-line pitch for your book that really works. And by works, I mean the listener immediately wants to go out and buy your book. The most common mistake authors make is that they think, oh, I'm going to tell this listener, this poor soul, what my book is about. That's not what you should be doing. Instead, I want you to think about this one-line pitch as a storytelling advice. You're trying to create surprise and mystery and intrigue enough that, you know, the listener wants to go out and buy your book. For instance, look at The Vet's Daughter by Barbara Cummins. A meek, abused girl in suburban London discovers that she can levitate, and the adults around her immediately seek a way to profit from it. First of all, we have surprise, right? Ooh, levitation. All right, my interest is piqued. 2, we have mystery. How exactly are the adults going to profit? Like, what are they going to do to her? And 3, we have conflict. Obviously, what the adults want is very different than what this girl wants. Now, after you have your one-line pitch, you just need to practice it again and again so you can trot it out when drunk at a party and it just rolls off the tongue. And then use this line on your back cover and use it really whenever you talk about the book. Now, if you can't make someone want to read your book in a single sentence, then maybe the appeal of your book isn't quite clear in your own brain. So you need to spend some time thinking about, like, why would someone want to read this book? Like, what sort of pleasures are they looking for? What's interesting about my book? And be able to condense that down into a single memorable sentence. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and you want your book to succeed, please subscribe to the channel and please like this video. It's basically like a pledge you're making to yourself and to your book that you want to invest more in your book's success. Now, the 5th thing that you absolutely should do before publishing your novel is checking your chapter lengths. So you really should audit your chapter lengths before you go to print. And I would just really recommend making a list of every single chapter and then the word count for that chapter. And just get a really big overview of your book. If every single chapter is 3,000 words and then you have one 15,000 word chapter, you got to ask yourself, like, should I break that up? Like, are people going to be flummoxed by that? Flummoxed is such a word, like flabbergasted, like, those are just great words. Now, this is a very complex topic, and I do have a whole video about chapter lengths where I go into various reasons why you might want to have one chapter that's like much, much longer than all the rest. But if you just like accidentally have a much longer chapter, that's not a good sign. Now, the 6th point you've probably heard before, but it's still an essential step you absolutely cannot skip. And it is number 6. Read it out loud. The ear catches all the dropped words and skipped words and wonky rhythms that the eye just sort of skims right over. Your ear is really smart, and that's what makes this probably the single most high-yielding thing that you can do before publication. One thing that you never notice when reading silently, but you do notice when reading out loud, is rhyme. So if you have a line like, he tried to hide the pride he felt inside, you might read over that and be like, I don't know, you know, it's a sentence, right? It works. You read that aloud and you're like, ooh, like, am I writing a children's book? Like, I should probably change some of those words. Another example would be something that reads at first like a noun, but then you realize it's actually a verb. The complex houses married and single soldiers. So you initially read it as a noun like, oh, it's the complex houses, right? But no, it's the complex houses. It's a verb. It houses the married and single soldiers. See, little things like that that can really trip up a reader and make them like feel confused about your sentence, you can catch them if you read your book out loud. There's two really important things you want to look for when you're reading out loud. One is places where you're stumbling, right? Where you misread is often a signal to you that like, you know, maybe I should adjust that phrasing or adjust that sentence. Like there's a reason why you misread it. And then two, and this one's really, really useful, where do you get bored? Right? Because you can get bored reading your own work, especially if you're reading like a whole novel out loud or reading a novel like in a single sitting for more than an hour. I think boredom tells you something about pacing. Do you need to cut a couple of paragraphs? Should you start that chapter a little bit earlier or a little bit later? Now, if you're like, John, I'm a busy person, I don't have time to read my entire book out loud, then I would suggest making software read it to you, right? And you can listen to it when you're at the gym or when you're on a walk or something. And even hearing that out loud will also help you to realize some mistakes. Okay, we're gonna end on the most surprising point, the one I don't think any of you saw coming. It is number 7, the chapter 2 check. Look, everybody knows that you focused a lot on chapter 1, right? I mean, all writers do. They like nail that first chapter because they know, like, you know, that's got to draw readers into the story. But here's the thing, like, readers, if they buy a book, they're almost always going to read the first chapter. That's sort of like the gimme chapter. However, things come down to brass tacks when it comes to chapter 2, because now they're like, you know, maybe this book wasn't for me. Chapter 2 is the place where you really have to convince them to keep reading. So just ask yourself some questions. How does chapter 2 build on and accelerate and escalate the events that happened inside chapter 1? Is it continuing what chapter 1 set up? Is it continuing to advance the plot? Does chapter 2 start with a bang, hook the reader, and then end on some sort of question or mystery that intrigues your reader? Hey, just a reminder to check out BookFox Lab because I would love to work with you on your book. And I hope this video has really helped you with the things that you really need to do before going to publication. Happy writing.